Welcome to You Know Me, a podcast for Brunswick and the Golden Isles. I'm Buddha.
I'm the Beard.
And it's September now. Can't believe it.
Yeah, football season.
That's right. It's football and pumpkin spice. So,
do those two things go together? Can you have like a pumpkin spice football?
I hope not. Really, football and pumpkin spice should not go together.
You might upset some viewers.
I know. Well, this is the time of year NFL just started, so we're going to have a lot of NFL widows. And, but high school football has started.
Yes.
And we're here with Coach. Coach, why don't you introduce yourself to everyone and tell us a little bit about yourself?
My name's Rocky Hidalgo. I'm the head football coach here at Glynn Academy. Finishing up my 11th year here, or just starting my 11th year, I suppose. Married to an awesome wife, got 3 awesome kids. My daughter is a college volleyball player, Young Harris. Son is a senior here at Glynn Academy, plays tight end on the football team, is kind of a genius guy. I don't know where he got that. I think I accused my wife of having an affair because my kids are so smart. And then I have a 12-year-old who's in 7th grade. I'm just kind of a normal dude. Like some college football, get on my boat, drink a beer, and do a little fishing every now and then.
Yeah,
that sounds great.
Nice hearing that. So did you play high school? Did you play football in high school?
I did. Played football in high school and in college. I played at Rhodes College in Memphis, Tennessee, a little D3 school. I had never been anywhere when I went off to college. I was 18 years old, grew up in a small town in Louisiana, and, had never been on an airplane. I'd been to Biloxi, Mississippi, and Houston, Texas. Those are the 2 places I'd ever been. And college was good for me because it allowed me to kind of go see parts of the world I'd only read about or seen on television.
Did you always, were you always fascinated with football? How did you get into football?
I always wanted to coach. My dad coached like Little League and youth football, so we were always around it. Even when I was in high school, I used to go to his games and sit up in the box. He bought a pair of headsets, and I would sit in the box and be on the headsets during the rec football games. And I've always kind of been fascinated with the game. It's been awesome for me. The game has been awesome for me. I think a lot of people, I tell people this, is football is a vehicle for, not just football, but sports are a vehicle for kids. And it takes them places that they never get a chance to go without it. And it opens doors sometimes that would never open without it. Yeah. And that's what it was with me. It allowed me to meet a bunch of amazing people that were kind of outside my sphere of influence, but also go to places and go to California and Pittsburgh and just all over the country to play some college football games and meet people from all over the country. Just broaden my horizons a bit.
Yeah.
And also you get a lot of life lessons out of playing too, and you kind of really figure out who you are as a person.
Yeah, I think I believe football is the greatest sport on the planet. I do, and of course I'm biased, but it's a difficult sport. A lot of people think guys who play football are dummies, and that's not really the case. The people who play football are generally some of the smartest people in the school. It's because it's 11th to the 11th power. Football is kind of always in motion, and there's a lot of learning and understanding that you have to do to be good at it. But the other side is 90% of football, and I talk to the kids all the time about this, is 90% of football is it sucks. I mean, it sucks. It's different than any other sport. Where baseball, once baseball season goes, you're playing 3 or 4 games a week. Basketball, you're doing that. The majority of those games, even when you're practicing, is playing the sport. Football is very, very different. 90% of what you do is not playing the sport. It's broken down into these core components where it's you working against another offensive lineman with a coach yelling at you, and you've got 40 pounds of equipment on. It's hot. It's the idea of this delayed gratification. It's an investment in yourself. It's learning to kind of struggle through some things and developing grit. I tell people grit is a skill, and grit is a skill that is sorely lacking in our society nowadays, especially among young people. We have an inability to overcome adversity. I mean, a lot of people just wilt when they struggle with things. And I'm talking about this. Struggle makes us strong. Football teaches adversity. It teaches grit. Grit's a skill. And if you don't practice being gritty, if you don't practice those things, then you have no chance to be mentally tough. And And so that's why I think it's the greatest sport. I think, and it's not that that's not detracting or taking away from any other sports.
Right.
I just think football is unique in that. And that's why I love it. That's how I love working with the kids in the community, because I see our kids grow. Everybody thinks that your favorite players are the guy. I coach DJ Dallas, who's playing in the NFL, and Chase Thomas, who played in the NFL, and those were great players. But my favorite players are always the ones that had to really work really hard to be good at it. The program kids that showed up every day 200 times a year and busted their hump in the weight room to make themselves into somebody on the football field. And that type of attitude, that type of dedication, that approach to life, those are the kids that are going to be, regardless what's in front of them, are always going to have the ability to overcome things because they've learned it in our football program.
Right.
Mm-hmm. So you talked about it a little bit. They only play one game a week, whereas baseball, they'll play 3 or 4 games a week, basketball, 3 or 4 games a week. You practice all week for one game. What goes into those practices? How do you get your guys ready for play? I know you're running plays, but there's still a lot of skill sets you have to install. There's still a lot of drills that go on to make you, to make your position better, but others can build that grit.
Yeah.
I remember doing like the Oklahoma drills and a few other drills that every football player hates to do.
Yeah.
But that's what it does. It builds up that toughness.
Football, if you're a football coach, good football coaches are great teachers. And you have to have I was talking with somebody today about this, is really good football coaches are able to identify a problem and formulate a solution for it very, very well. And that's one of those things when you go and you watch guys coach, you see guys, and they may come up with different scenarios to solve that problem, but they're in this problem, the solution business, and they come up with those solutions sometimes in their own unique way. I think when you go to a football practices are very organized. There's a thought processes, to me, a lot of teachers in the school building could learn a lot from coaches about how to approach and teach things. Yeah, I was asked to help with the county literacy teachers about some of their instruction. Basically, what they want to do is teach some of these new teachers how to be better teachers, and they want Coach Grady, who's the head football coach at Brunswick High, and I to sit down and kind of show them a little bit about coaching, because they're thinking of this in terms of a team mentality and coaching other people. And we kind of broke it out. We explained to them that what we want to do is show you what goes into coaching our kids. How much time, effort, and energy is put into getting someone to do something very, very, very small.
Right.
Something as easy as just steps. And that's everything is about how we do our steps and all that stuff, our footwork, our stance, because football is built on a million little bitty details.
Yeah.
And that's what coaching's about. Practice planning, organization, all of those things.
So a lot of analyticals, logistics.
So that's part of it. Part of it is breaking down your opponent and understanding what you're going to have to do to kind of be to win. How do you hide your weaknesses and overcome their strengths? That's part of it, but that's a very small part of it. And so, for me, I don't really care or worry about our opponent. I focus on us. I don't spend any time worrying about losing games. I focus on winning.
Right.
Everything we do is focused on winning games. So that's the first thing. But it's more than just analyzing an opponent and saying, hey, these are the plays we need to stop. It starts with us. Everything is about us. If we go and play well and perform well and we are fundamentally sound, great things are going to happen.
Right.
And that's kind of what we approach and we look at. And so football practice is about preparing for your opponent, but it's really more about preparing your players to kind of overcome whatever they're going to see on Friday night. That's my philosophy. It's always about us. It's never about the team we play.
Right.
How do you get yourself prepared? How do you get your coaching staff prepared for the week ahead before the game?
Well, so it's like anything else. So it's, football staff is an organization. There's a hierarchy. And so, one of the things when you go in, you have, you have position coaches who are kind of, their perspective is very close. They're right in a player's face, in his grill, working one-on-one. Then you have coordinators who are developing these kind of larger game plans, and in slotting those players, those individual players in that game plan. Then you have a head coach is looking at something, kind of this all program encompassing, which is kind of how I see it. So the offensive coordinator is trying to figure out how to score points, and the defensive coordinator is trying to figure out how to stop the O team. The special teams coordinator is trying to figure out Friday night's special teams game plan. My job is to look at those things and say, hey guys, this team is really, really good on offense. So they're probably going to score 24, 27 points. So we've got to figure out a way to score 31 and 34 points, which is a different approach if you're an offensive coordinator than if I walk in here and say, hey, this is a really, really good defensive team. We're going to have to play great defense Friday night, and we're trying to find two ways to get in the end zone to win this game 14-10. So it's a program approach, a philosophy that we have to understand. Everybody, the defensive staff needs to understand what the offensive staff is facing, to understand that, if they're facing a great defensive football team, we're not going to score a lot of points this week. Then defensively, we may have to take more risks. Sometimes you have to risk getting beat 42-0 to have a chance to win the game if you're playing somebody who's better than you. I know a lot of people won't understand that. But, there are a lot of games we could go in and lose 17-7. My goal isn't to lose close. My goal is trying to win games.
Right.
And so we have to risk against teams that are superior to us. And sometimes you beat them, not always, but sometimes you beat them. We have to risk getting beat badly because you have to take more risk in a game to beat a team who's better than you. And so with everybody's understanding, hey, we have to steal some possessions. That means we may have to fake some punts on onside kick. So that goes, the special teams coordinator has to understand that. So when he's planning the game plan, he can have a, perspective that's appropriate for this week. We're going to have to be aggressive. So that it all goes. So that's kind of my idea. That's what I do here. And I manage those coaches. And my job is to coach the coaches. When I see things, when I go back and watch film, hey, these things aren't getting done, you get what you inspect, not what you expect.
Right.
So my job is to inspect that the coaches are doing a great job. And if they're not, I look at them and go, hey, man, this has got to get coached better, because every day is a job. I tell these guys, every day is a job interview. When you walk in here, you apply for a job and you say, I want to coach the defensive line at Glynn Academy. You're saying you're capable of coaching that job. So when they walk in the door here, they go down on the field, they can't do it. Then two things are going to happen. One, they've got to improve in a hurry, or two, I'm going to start coaching them. If I have to coach that position, I don't need them anymore.
Right.
And that's no different than running a business. And so guys have got to improve, and we have a standard here. We're not going to lower our standard because you can't keep up. That's for me, and that probably sounds really harsh to people, but that's kind of how we're going to run it.
Wow.
That's how you run it. I mean, that's the way to do it. How do you get yourself prepared during the off season? The players, they're going to be hitting the gym, they're going to be doing road work, they're getting themselves ready. How do you get yourself ready for the next season coming up?
Well, I think that's, it's like anything else. It is a mindset, because football is it's a marathon. It's not a sprint.
Right.
People always go, well, you started football on August 1st. Football starts when our season ends. We have about 2 weeks where we kind of just low key chill out, and then football starts again. And so football is a year-long process. It's 200 days a year. Now, once the football season gets here, it's 6 or 7 days a week. Even if you're at home, you're working, you're breaking down film. Everybody has a job to do. Our coaches work on Sundays. We come in, we meet at 1:00 on Sunday. By Sunday at 1:00, they have to have all of their work done so that we can come and have it. That means they've got to input data into a computer from Friday night's film. And so they have to have all of that work done. So so mentally you have to prepare yourself. It's like steeling yourself for a long competition, because it is, from the last week in July until the state championship game, is 17, 21, 22 weeks. And it's 6 to 7 days a week for 22 weeks. It's not easy. It's hard. It's hard emotionally. It's hard mentally. So, that's one thing. You have to prepare yourself mentally that you're about to go into this, and you just got to take a deep breath and go get after it. It's kind of like you got to attack it. The other side is what we have to do is we have to prepare ourselves in the off season. Once, in January, February, March, we have to do things like, what are we going to do from a program-wide standpoint in terms of offensive, defensive play, special teams? We always look at our kids, and I tell people this: our coaches don't tell me what our kids can't do, tell me what they can do, and let's build a football team around them. I'm not tied to a particular offense or defense. What I want to do is put the best 11 players on the field and do what those kids can do. So sometimes we may have a kid that's a great running quarterback. We might be a triple option team. We have a kid that can throw the ball. We may be a more pro-style team. So that's a point in January. We have to take an evaluation of our kids and go, these are the things that they can do. The other side of that is the strength conditioning aspect of it, is going in before Christmas and saying, okay, these are the things we want to accomplish in the weight room, and how we're going to get there. Likewise, you have to look at your depth chart and go, these are the positions where we don't have a lot of people. We have to develop some kids here. So these 3 players have got to have a great offseason for us to have success. So when we come back from Christmas break, that's a big focus. Those individuals that we feel like are keys to our success, we're going to stay on those guys, because if they can't get it done, we got to find somebody else. We got to come up with a different plan. So those are all the things that we do, or some of the things that we do to prepare ourselves for the season. But it's a big chore. It's a long season.
Wow.
How has coaching for you changed since you started? Has it changed a lot for you in terms of how you coach, or the type of players you're getting, or
even technology?
Technology has been huge. I mean, first off, technology. You film practice with drones, have high def cameras, 4K cameras, so you can see. You can see the hand placement on a guy, how his foot movement. You can slow mo these things and frame for frame. Pick these things up and see. You can zoom in on a video where before it was just grainy and you really couldn't see what's going on. Now you can take 4K video from a drone, and I can see where a kid's put his first step and look on the film and go, this guy's step's not in the right spot. So technology's been huge. Also things like huddle, sharing video. You used to have to take, actually video film and get a copy made and then drive that. Everybody would drive this one place and get your films copied, and he would make films, give it to you, and then you would drive it over to your opponent. And then there were VHS tapes, and then there were DVDs, and now it's all in the cloud. And so, you share video with just a click of a button. If you wanted to get video on somebody back in the day, you had to drive all the way across the state to get it. Now you just pick the phone up, and within 10 seconds, you have it. So technology has been huge. And that doesn't even get into things like the safety aspect of it, because how much the equipment's changed. Kids have changed a bunch, but kids have always been changing. And I think you kind of have to adapt. You have to be fluid when you deal with young people. I don't necessarily think kids are any worse or better than they used to be. I think they're just very different. I think their skills are very different. I think their strengths are very different. I think their weaknesses are very different. And I don't think kids, I said this, young people don't have the capacity to handle adversity like they used to do. And that's part of it. I do think they because of social media, they have probably a little more wherewithal about the world around them a little bit than I had in 1987 growing up in Denham Springs, Louisiana. I didn't know what people's lives were like in Boston.
Right.
I remember we hosted a Babe Ruth tournament, baseball tournament in South Louisiana. We had these guys a baseball team come down from Boston, and they thought everything was going to be like Venice. They were going to take a boat everywhere. They thought there wasn't roads, and they were going to take boats. But I mean, I remember going places and go, oh, that's just nothing like when the first time I went to L.A. It was blown away. It was nothing like I thought it was going to be. Kids today have a little more, global awareness of what life is like in other countries. They're very different. They learn differently. But I'm a big believer in, Confucius says, I hear and I forget, I see and I remember, I do and I understand.
Yep.
So kids today are no different than other kids, from 40 years ago. You tell them to do something, they're going to suck at it because 99% of the people on the planet don't take, oral instruction very well.
Yeah.
But the other side of this is they probably do better with video than kids 25 years ago. You show them film, they're better at that than kids 25 years ago. My preferred means of teaching things is to show them and then let them do it and correct them as they do it. But correcting them, videotape it, and show them themselves. They're really good at learning that way.
Yeah.
Which, I probably would have not been able to do because I was not as versed. I didn't watch as much TV back then.
Yeah. So like even you as a coach, you have to learn instructional techniques because you mentioned Confucius. That's I'm an instructor, and that is one of the things when I teach someone to be a new instructor. That's exactly the same quote that I use.
Yep.
So you have.
You always have to learn, and each kid's different. You have a football team. I have a football team of 130 kids, and my job is to get them to perform. And I tell people, I was watching some young kids play football, and one of the coaches told me they can't get anybody to do this, and I was like, well, man, that's not a failure of the kid; it's a failure of the coaches. My job is to get them to perform. If I can't get them to perform, if I can't get them to do the right things, that's on me. Now, every kid, every athlete can learn to do things correctly. Now, not all of them have the ability to be successful with it, but I can watch a film and go, that guy has been coached really well. He's just not very athletic. And then you watch a film on another kid who is really athletic and looks like a great player, but he's not coached particularly well. So those are the things like, when I think of those things, when I hear people talk about that, every kid's going to be a little different how they learn. Some kids you can crawl up their backside and they're going to respond to that. Other kids you got to coax them to do it. Some of them, I say this, some of them have got to be drugged, some of them got to be carried, some of them got to be kicked, and some of them got to be pushed. But however we get those kids there, we got to get them there, and so that's all of our, some of them got to put your arm around and just escort them all the way to success. My job is to get them there regardless how we have to get them there.
Yeah. Now, do you see a difference between the different grade levels of, you're speaking about the coaching. Do you see a difference in the grade levels of how they respond?
Yeah. I mean, it is about, there's part of that, like part of working with young kids, 8th graders, 9th graders, sophomores, is teaching them kind of the program culture, what football is going to be like. It's more about how to do things than what to do. As they get older, they learn more what to do. So how to do things, can't and won't are the same thing in life.
Right. You
can have somebody who, and this kind of goes back to what I just said, you can have the most talented person on the planet. If they're not willing to do what they're supposed to do, it doesn't matter. They're going to be ineffective at it. Likewise, you can have a kid who does everything right and is not talented enough to get the job done. You're at the same point with both of them.
Right.
I would rather coach a kid who's not talented enough and is going to respond to coaching than a kid who's super talented and doesn't want to respond. And so young kids, for us, it's all about teaching them about the program. It's like birthing a 12-pound baby sometimes. It's an ugly process. It's painful. And I tell people, I'm not always going to be nice to these guys. I'm hard on our players. I've got 2 sons and a daughter. I've been hard on all 3 of them. I love them. Every one of these kids in the program, I love. I love them like they're mine. But, I'm going to be hard on them. And I do that because I do care about them.
Right.
Mr. Rogers, I watched an interview with Mr. Rogers one time, and he talked about discipline is love. When we fail to discipline kids, we fail to love them. My job is to discipline these kids and get them to understand what they can and cannot do, what is acceptable, what's not acceptable. And when they learn that, then they are something that we can teach and we can mold and we can make into something. If they refuse to do the right things, I need players, not problems.
Right.
I tell them up front, this is a program for players, not problems. I will be patient with them. I will bring them along and try to teach them. But at some point in time, when they remain to be players, they have to either do what they're asked to do or they have to graduate and move on from the program, go somewhere else and do something else.
Now, how difficult is it to select the players to be on the football team? Like, how much heartache goes into it? How much thought?
Well, we don't have any cuts. I'm a big believer that every kid that football is good for every kid, and some kids are good for football.
Right.
So if we have 180 come out, I'll go raise the money and put uniforms and pads on 180 kids.
Wow.
We have over 130 kids in the program right now. They're good kids. Most of them are doing what they're asked to do, and they go show up every day and they work their tails off. So I don't cut any kids. I don't care if they're not in it. We have some kids that aren't very good football players. We have some kids that are spectacular players, and everything in between. My goal every day is for those kids, every one of those 130 kids, to show up every day and make themselves better. Well, I got to tell them, look, we want to be good Americans. I want to be a better American. I want to be a better person, be a son or daughter, brother or sister, teacher or student in the classroom, all of those things. We want to be better at that every day, including, academically and athletically.
Right.
And so that's our goal with all those kids. Show up every day, bust your hump, then you get to stay part of the program, and I'll buy you a nice jacket when you graduate.
That's amazing. I love that.
That's awesome. So you're at a pretty high level. I mean, Glynn Academy is one of the top divisions of the state.
Yes, sir.
You get a lot of talent comes through. You've got some players that have gone on to the NFL.
Mm-hmm.
You get into Division I schools with scholarships. How does that get into the mindset of some of these older players you have as they're getting into that about when they are good enough to possibly have scouts looking at them, especially now with NIL? Yep. That's been a big thing, and I'll go on record. I've never been a fan of that. And then, now there's a transfer portal. NCAA is kind of looking like a small version of the NFL
right
at this point. How is that? Is that a distraction for some of your players?
Well, I wouldn't say it's a distraction. Like I said earlier, I think football is a vehicle for these kids, and a lot of them want to play ball in college. My job is to try to make that as possible if I can. Now, I don't control scholarships, so the colleges are going to be the guys that determine if they're going to offer a kid or not offer a kid. So but my job is to facilitate that best I can. Market our players to colleges, try to get them on college campus, take them to games, introduce them to college coaches, all those things. I think the recruiting has changed a ton in the past few years, specifically the early signing day. It used to be kids could go and they could play their senior year, and they would pick up offers, September, October, November, December, January, and sign at a big school in February. That has changed a ton with the early signing day, and it's pushed up the evaluation process for a lot of these kids. So sophomore and junior film, the pressure on the kids to perform as sophomores and juniors is greater than it's ever been, which, a lot of times if you play 6A football, 5A football, a kid who's a sophomore, even if he's a really good player, is a limited player in your program. I think another thing, the whole NIL thing, I think players should be able to make money on their name, image, and likeness. I think the idea behind NIL is okay. I think if a student who's in a math class at the University of Georgia can go sell T-shirts and make money on it, then I think the starting quarterback at Georgia should be able to sell T-shirts with his face on and make money on it too. I don't believe the NFL the NCAA did a very good job with the rollout of NIL. I think they probably could have done a much better job of marketing. I think what it was intended to do and be has been corrupted, and I think that's why you kind of see that kind of the way it is right now with college sports. I think there is some of that bleeds into a little bit with the higher end players in the high school level who are getting paid. As a high school kid, they're getting paid to visit college campuses. I mean, $5,000 to $10,000. If you want a 5-star kid to come on your campus, my understanding is $5,000 to $10,000 to get them on campus.
Wow.
And so to me, I don't agree with that. I don't believe that is the way it should go. The transfer portal, a lot of people are down on that one, but heck, the kids ought to be able to go to a different school if they want to go. I mean, I don't necessarily like it. I think it's harder for colleges. But the other side is, hell, it's America. You want to go, you should get to go whatever school you want to go to.
That's right.
And now I think the transfer portal has negatively impacted high school recruiting because so many colleges focus on the portal so much that you're not getting as many kids offered out of high school. And I think a little bit, I think it's going to become top heavy at some point in time. They can't sign enough kids to support college football. The other side is I would say most of the people coming out of the portal, from talking with a lot of college coaches, are backing off on signing a bunch of portal kids because in a lot of ways what you're doing is getting other people's problems. And I think if you talk to college coaches, that's what a lot of them are saying. They're looking around going, you know what, we're not signing as many portal kids because most of those guys didn't have an impact for us, or they were problems when we got them in the locker room. We'd rather just recruit some kids and develop our guys over the next 3 or 4 years. So it's an issue, and that recruiting has changed tremendously at the high school level in the last 5 or 6 years.
Yeah, I can see that. That's been such a hot topic with everything that's gone on. And I think that students should play wherever they want to play when they get to that college level. And so it seems like it's much harder for the college coaches now because they kind of have to re-recruit the players they have.
They do. But the college coaches have dug this hole for themselves.
They have.
And because what they've done is, the transfers at the high school level, kids who just transfer wherever they want to go, college coaches have just gone in and recruited those kids, and they don't care if they played at 3 or 4 high schools. We don't care. He's a good player, so we're just going to recruit him. Well, now those kids want to transfer 3 or 4 times at the high school level. So, they've made their bed, let them lay in it. And when they come in and complain about how they have to work 20 hours a day and recruit every kid, I look at them and go, well, that's your fault because you're signing those type of kids. Sign kids that are loyal to their high school team, that show up on campus the first day and spend 4 years there. Sign the right type of kids, And I think, I think if you look at a guy like Kirby Smart, and I'm sure he's getting some guys that transfer here or there. I think that guy runs the reason that they've got the best players, but the other thing they have is I think he's got the best culture. Mm-hmm. He's got the best culture. You don't see him losing 30 guys to the transfer portal every year. He's not signing 30 in the transfer portal every year because he's signing guys who have a specific mindset. And those guys want to come in, they want to bust their hump, they want to turn themselves in, and he sells them on it. He does a great job with that. And I think that's, if you look at that, and then you have the other side of that is Dabo Swinney, Clemson, who doesn't want to dabble in the portal at all and wants to develop kids over the course of 3 or 4 years and probably would be able to do that, except he's losing so many guys to the transfer portal. So I think they're trying to figure out who are the 25 guys to sign at Clemson who are going to stay committed in the program and be able to wait to develop over 3 or 4 years. I really root for him because I hope that works. I hope that works out for him because that's the program that I run. Where I don't go recruit, I don't recruit any kids. We're going to take a bunch of kids, the kids that show up here as 9th graders. We're going to train their butts off for 4 years, and we're going to turn them into football players. We're going to have a good football team with the kids that show up in this building. I'm not in the business of going to recruit kids, and I don't want a bunch of transfers. That's not what I want. I want to develop a relationship with kids, change their lives, and go bust their humps and turn them into men.
And that's great. Thanks for bringing up Dabo Swinney because I was going to ask about that because his philosophy is very different. He's really kind of swimming upstream of all that. One of the things is, like the freshman, when I was in high school, you were freshman, it had nothing to do with JV or the varsity team. Is that the same way it works now? Do you have a freshman that maybe could actually step up and play on a Friday night?
We've had a few. And so usually if a freshman plays for us, it's probably because we have a hole somewhere in the lineup. We're thin on the offensive line or we're thin at wide receiver, and we have a talented kid in the freshman class. So we've played 2 or 3 guys, and that's usually been the case when we played them is because we were just kind of shy of some guys at a position here or there. And we had this guy who was really good, and he was able to play. Usually if you're playing freshmen, you're probably not going to have a great football team. Now, that's at 5A, 6A level in the state of Georgia. At single A football, you're going to play a bunch of freshmen because you're going to have 30, 40 kids in the program. There's schools in the state. You got 40 boys on the football team. You're going to play 9th graders. And so the game is very different. I've never coached at a small school. I tell some friends who coach single A football, I wouldn't, if somebody walked in and said, hey, you're the new head coach at McIntosh County, I wouldn't know how to run a practice. I have never run a practice with 40 kids before like that. So for me, it would be so different. I would have to go and sit down and talk with people. Hey, man, how do you structure practices and look at practice schedules? And it would be a learning process for me to do that with so few kids because I'm used to running programs with 110, 130, 140, 150 kids. Play 11-11. There are some 8-man football teams out there. I think there's a few in Georgia, but they still play. But even Frederica here, I don't know exactly how big the school is, a couple hundred kids there, but he's got 25 kids on the football team. They play 11-man football with Giesa. But look, and if he's playing some 9th grader kids, but that's what you have to do at that level. But everybody is generally doing that when you're playing that level of football. And so, and Bradley Warren at McIntosh does a great job. He does. He's a really good football coach. Does a great job of what he does, and it's going to be very different than my job here. It's just we've got two different animals. And, it would be a learning process for me to go and do it.
Yeah, I know a few people that played the 8-on-8, and I was just bummed that, oh my God, I couldn't do that. That'd be really tough. And
I've seen some videos of it. I don't know enough about it, but it's like anything else. It's guys or, kids that want to play football. They're getting a chance to go do it, and, more powerful to them. I know out in kind of in the Midwest and kind of Kansas, Oklahoma, there's a lot of 8-man football out there because you've got these small schools in these communities, rural communities. So, more power to them. Go get after it.
Now, you have 130 on the football program, but you play 11 on the field, correct? Like, how do you choose your roster?
The freshmen play freshman ball, so we still have freshman team. The sophomores are JV. And so basically all of our kids, 10th, 11th, 12th, dress out Friday night with us.
Okay.
They all dress out Friday night with us. Our sophomores and any junior that does not start plays in the JV game. I want kids who are playing, not sitting the bench for a whole year. So my juniors who do not start for us on Friday nights are going to play in the JV games on Thursdays. And then outside of that, we probably, in the course of a game on a Friday night, we probably play 40 kids. And so we find time for kids to contribute to the football program. So again, don't ask me what our kids can't do. Tell me what they can do, and let's find things they can do. So we find some ways to look at kids and go, this guy is a kid that he's really good in the run game. So on first downs, he might be in on run game, and then he comes out. This guy's he's a good cover guy. So we're going to put him in there during coverage situations. And so it's about using our personnel, just using what we have. Getting kids off the field on extra point, field goal, kickoff, kick return. Where can we find some guys to go out there and put their face on somebody and block somebody on a kick return? Run down the field and cover a kick. All those things are, it's looking at guys who, this guy will run and tackle. Okay, he can be on the kickoff team. It's finding ways to utilize the talent that I have been given.
Right.
And it's just like anything else. Whether you're a federal law enforcement officer or you work in a business, utilizing the things at your disposal.
Right. Awesome.
One of the things, with football is there's, with skill positions, there's a lot of technique and a lot of things that you do on the field. There's technique in throwing the football, technique in running your routes, technique in tackling. And, when you watch some of the college and a lot of the pros, it drives me nuts because they're putting their heads down, they're just kind of leading in with their shoulder. And I'll always remember my high school football coach, Doug Arangio, and it's like, you got to see what you hit.
Yep.
You get your head up, face mask of the numbers, arms around the legs, and you drive them down to the ground.
Yep.
Why do they get away from that as they move up in the ranks?
Well, I don't necessarily think they do. I think you just have, there's some, you have undisciplined kids at every level. And there's probably some of that. And some guys who aren't good tacklers aren't going to be, the NFL, not for long.
Mm-hmm.
They're not going to be there for long if they can't tackle, if they can't learn to tackle. And sometimes, so there's a lot of things that go into it. Tackling has really changed in the last 15 or 20 years because of the concussion issue. So most people are using a different type of tackle. It used to be you go put your face on somebody, and that's what they say. We still say, hey, you got to see what you hit. But now most people are doing rugby-style tacklings or what they call the Seahawks. The Seahawks developed what they call the hog tackling. We call it terror tackling, version of tackling. There are guys who specialize in teaching tackling who go all over the country and work with NFL teams and college teams. One of them, the best ones, is in Georgia. The Tackling Academy, a guy by the name of Spencer Smith does it. He's got great videos, and He's got great tackling videos to go online and learn how to teach young people how to tackle. But I think, it's like tackling's a skill like anything else. And, something you said, the skill players, the real skilled players are the guys on the line of scrimmage.
Mm-hmm.
The most skilled players, fundamentally the most skilled players in a football game are the offensive linemen, and it's in the defensive linemen. Those are the places where fundamentals, technique matters more than anything. And technique matters on a football field all over the place. But on the lines of scrimmage, so much goes into being good and winning there just everything. Just from I do clinics, and I'll do 50 minutes on literally steps just on foot placement. And most people don't spend enough time and think about that. But if you think about it, if I take a big step, I'm off balance. I can't, and then if I overextended, I can't drive with my back foot and put any power in it. The goal for us is to get 2 feet in the ground as quickly as possible so we can knock the hell out of somebody on the lines of scrimmage. And so having the discipline that we're going to put 2 quick steps and boom, boom. And that's this is the most thankless job too. It is. You don't get your name in the paper over there.
No, some of the most important pieces to the game. If people kind of forget to or look over and say, look at the quarterback and the receivers and the running back. I'll tell you, as a former running back, I appreciate a good offensive line. How do you get these guys? Because it's tough for them. It's just, a car wreck, especially on offense. Your hands have to be certain way. If you get one hand a little bit loose, it's a
pad level hands, footwork, hips. I mean, you literally, everything in your body's got to be in conjunction to be successful.
I always say offensive line, defensive line, controlling line of scrimmage is always the number one priority in establishing a game plan.
It is. And, for me, if you can't control the line of scrimmage, you're probably not going to win the game. Now, you can have 5 explosive plays. I remember, I was taking grad school class with a guy and lost to a team who went like 9 of 35 passing and hit a fade ball 5 times. And, those happen, explosive plays. They hit 5 long touchdown passes and won the game. But usually if you control the line of scrimmage, you're going to win the football game.
So what are some of the messages that you want to convey to your players through the course of the season and what they can take when they graduate and move on, whether they're going to play the next level or they're just going to college or maybe going to vocation?
Well, I think the biggest thing for me is, like I said, I want them to be a terror for 40 years, not 4. And what I mean by that is I want them to be good Americans. I want them to be upstanding citizens. I want them to understand the idea that I am going to invest. I never talk about spending time. People go, spend time. We got to spend some time in the weight room. We got to spend. When you spend something, your money is gone and it never comes back. An investment is when I put something in and I'm going to get more in return. And so we talk about our kids investing in themselves on a daily basis. And some of our kids get that and understand and buy into it. And some of them don't do it as well. I'd love to sit here and go, they all get it, but not everybody, that's not reality. But, I want them to understand the idea, we talked about grit and adversity, just understanding when they're 41 years old and their wife walks out on them or they lose their job and all that stuff, that there's just going to be a grain of toughness, something they learned when they were 15 years old on the football field that's going to get them out of bed and get them up and get them going to work and keep their life in the road so it doesn't fall apart. So many people's lives are ruined because of an instant, because of one thing. Talk to our kids. Don't let one bad moment become a bad day, become a bad week, become a bad month, become a bad year, become a bad life. That happens a ton in our society, where people let one thing obstruct them from success. Something bad happens and it compounds on them. They just dig a hole. When you find yourself in a hole, the first thing you have to do is stop digging. And so stop the bleeding. So if things are bad, then put your feet down and stop doing whatever behavior is creating this negative outcome. And so these kids understanding that this is, then I'm going to get up out of bed. I'm going to put my boots on. I'm going to go to work, and we'll start digging out. Let's just start digging out of this. Start moving forward.
Yeah. So it's, don't let the problem define you. It's how you choose to respond to that problem. Define you.
Everybody's going to get knocked down.
Yeah.
You got to get up. Everybody's got to get up. In everybody's life, at some point in time, you're going to get knocked down. It's the people that get up that are successful. There's if you've ever read the book Think and Grow Rich, it's a pretty interesting book because it's all about success. It's not about necessarily wealth. It's about success, growing rich in life. And the idea is that most people give up before when success is just right over the next. Most people in hindsight, they give up when they were within an arm's reach of success. And so the people who are successful in life, they just are willing to endure, keep going, keep getting up, keep failing, keep getting up. Eventually they're going to strike out. They're going to strike it rich or figure out the problem. And that's a skill.
Yeah. Just good. The next day could be that day of opportunity to get you back on the track. Next day.
I had a friend of mine. This was very impactful for me. I was probably 24, 25 years old. And his daughter, he had a very small daughter. She was like 18 months, 2 years old. She had a brain cancer. And I would go sit with him at the hospital, at Scottish Rite Hospital, Children's Healthcare of Atlanta. We'd go sit up at the hospital because he'd stay there at night. And I'd sit there and we'd go up there, bring lunch or bring something to eat, or we'd go grab a beer real quick and we'd kind of hang out and talk because he's up there by himself all night long. And I remember one night he was laying there and his daughter was in a medically induced coma, and they had been up there for weeks and months. And he had to change her diaper. And, I'm sitting here as he's, cleaning his daughter, puts a diaper on her. And I looked at him. I was like, Tim, how do you do this every day? How do you do that, man? How do you come up here and do this every day? And he looked at me and he goes, you don't have a choice. That was one of the most one of the greatest things I've ever been taught by somebody who in an instant, probably never, and he and I have talked about it, about how much of an impact. Most people, when they go through whatever they're going through in life, I shouldn't say most people, there are a lot of people out there that elect to, and defined philosophically, me. It did. That instant defined, this is, you go whatever your responsibility and our obligation. I say this all the time. Our society's changed. When Kennedy said, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. We changed. Our society has changed from one where we worried about our responsibilities and obligations to one where we worry about our rights and privileges. I don't feel that way. I focus that I am responsible for this. I am obligated to do this. If those are the things that I'm responsible to do, I will go to my grave trying to get it done. And not enough people probably feel that way. There's a big chunk of people that do. And that was one of those instances for me that really shaped me. It shaped me, just kind of how I believe about things. I don't have a choice. And if it's my job, then I don't have a choice. I'm going to stay up here till the kids get picked up. I'm going to make sure the laundry's washed. I'm going to make sure my kids, somebody's going to discipline my children. And when I say my children, I mean my kids that are biologically mine and the 130 that are in this program.
Right.
And if nobody else is going to do it, then I'm going to do it because that's because I don't have a choice. That's my.
Yeah. It gets them ready for life.
It does. I think you learn a lot of life lessons. Not just, football, you learn a lot, but if you're playing basketball or baseball or anything like that, working with people, beating the odds or getting over some kind of adversity. You get knocked down in football a lot. You get up. It hurts, but you get up. And once you get up, it doesn't hurt anymore. Talk with some kids about it. You got to have a short memory. That play's over. Now it's the next play. You might have fumbled the football and given your opposing team great position. You can't sit on that. You have to get back out there next time and do better. Be better. Be smarter. But it's not the end of the world.
You got to learn from it.
Yeah.
It's not a crime to fail. It's a crime to fail and fail to learn. And so if there's something in our society we don't do a very good job of anymore, is we don't let people fail anymore. We want to run in and rescue. Parents want to run in and rescue their kids as soon as they start to struggle. I look at I'll give an example. My dad made me do things.
Yes.
I make my children do things. When I work around the house, they are there doing it. Sometimes I look at them and go do that. I don't know how to do it. We'll figure it out. There are people who are dumber than you who do this for a living. If they figured it out, you who have a 35 on the ACT can figure it out. And I look at them, and it takes them a while. I say this, there are very few things in this life that I can't do because I can pull up a YouTube video and go, oh, I can figure this out.
Yep.
And I can't tell you how many things that I've done in my life. It's fulfilling to do something that you've never done before. And it takes time. Well, that was wrong. Sometimes you got to sort it out. And so we don't allow kids to do that. We think success defines them. That's not it at all.
No.
Failure shapes them. Success is never final and failure is never fatal. So when I deal with kids, it's okay for my kids. It's okay to fail. You got to learn from it. So I don't know if you're Star Trek fans. I'm a big believer the Kobayashi Maru test. I want to give our kids unwinnable tests so that they fail and learn from the test. This is the worst case scenario. How do they react? And my kids don't like it sometimes, but I don't care. Just figure it out. I didn't, and I say that because my dad used to tell me all the time. My dad loved me. I think to be a parent, a really good parent, you got to be a little bit selfish. Mm-hmm. My dad was a bricklayer, and he worked all day in the sun. He was hot, and from a very young age during the summer, I went to work with him. I pushed a wheel. I'll pay you like a full-grown man. When I was 12 years old, I could push a full wheelbarrow. And so I worked with him, and he paid me like a full-grown man. And I really appreciated that. But the thing what I learned from my dad is my dad would work all day outside, and he'd want to come home and sit in the air conditioner, take a shower, sit in the air conditioner, sit in a chair and watch Gunsmoke. He want to watch his old Westerns. And for us to sit here and, hey, Dad, I want to go to something. No, you can't do that. Your mom said no. Dad, can I sit there and huff and puff about it? My dad didn't care if I didn't like what he told me. He never cared about it. It was a negative phrase. He told me he didn't care a bunch. My dad his goal was never to make me happy. His goal was to raise me to be an adult. Mm-hmm. And so he told me he didn't care a bunch. I don't care, but don't sit on that couch and breathe heavily anymore. I want to eat my dinner and watch TV. Go away. And that was, and a lot of people would probably hear that and look at that and think of that. And my dad's he's my best friend, the person I respect the most in this world, because he did those things for me, looked at me and told me to shut up, get out of here. I have about it. Go somewhere. We don't look at him and we want to do an explanation. Sometimes, people need to learn, hey, this is how it's going to be. Now go away. And we got to move on to the next thing.
Right.
We can't spend an hour explaining why we're not doing this. And so I think to be a good parent, you have to be a little selfish sometimes.
Agreed.
And this is, hey, look, man, this is about me. It's not about you. Go away. You can love your kids. My dad loved me the whole time, but there were times he didn't want me in the room with him. He didn't want me sitting there ruining what he was trying to do. And I look back on that. I don't have a problem with it. I didn't like it at the time, but I did the same thing with Mike. You want to do? This is what I want to do. I'm the adult here. Go away.
Yep. That was, snow would fall down, and my dad's putting a snow shovel in my bed next to me.
That's it.
Let's go out there. We didn't have a snowblower. Our driveway was long enough for 3 cars. I shoveled that thing.
I have friends of mine who have 3 teenage boys and have a lawn service. My kids, I cut the grass when I was a kid. My kids cut the grass.
Yeah.
They cut the grass. That's their job. Cut the grass, do the dishes at night, and put the trash out on Mondays. And we're working on that trash on Mondays because when I show up and the trash isn't out at the road, then there's going to be hell to pay around the Hidalgo household. Somebody's going to sit home this week because the trash didn't get out to the road.
Oh, yeah. It was, if you wanted something, if I wanted a new record, I wanted a new stereo, I'll pay you $5 to cut the grass, and you save your money. And by the end of the summer, I'm cutting 7 yards.
Yeah.
And then when the winter comes, I'm shoveling 7 yards.
It feels good. People always look at this, and this probably sounds really weird, but you get fulfillment with what you do every day. So for people, like, people have this ultimate goal. My ultimate goal is just to retire and do nothing. Well, man, who wants to do that? I want to get up and go do something every day. Mm-hmm. And look, some days it might be sit on the beach and drink a beer. Some days it might be ride around and go fish and just, but the idea of rest and relaxation for the rest of my life, that seems great, but that's also sounds really boring to me. And so we get fulfillment by the things we accomplish in life.
Yeah.
And we lack fulfillment in society nowadays. People aren't fulfilled because they see things on social media where this guy is traveling the world and he's in these countries and my life sucks because I have to go to this 9-to-5 job. I mean, at some point in time, you just got to look around and go, you know what? I've got a pretty good life here. I make good money. I've got it. Sometimes we just have to do without stuff.
Right.
And that's another big issue in our society. Nobody wants to do without things. I was broke for a long time. And when my wife was in grad school and I was teaching, didn't have a lot of money. We didn't take vacations, didn't have nice cars, didn't live in a nice place. I had guys selling drugs down the street. As soon as she got out of grad school, first thing we did is move because I got tired of the guys selling drugs in the road down the street. But we did without. People don't want to do without anymore. Again, struggle.
Exactly. And I think I've also noticed that more people are celebrating other people's failures than celebrating their successes.
I don't have to. You don't have to. And look, I'm a football coach. We win on Friday nights, but my success is not dependent on your failure. I think that's a big thing. As they say, the rising tide lifts all boats. I root for other people. Look, I wouldn't say, rivals and all that stuff, teams that I'm like, man, I want to beat them really bad. But, it's as crazy as it sounds, it's one night a year for me. For me, I don't see it that my success is dependent on your failure. And I think a lot of people do believe that. I think they look in the mirror and go, well, all I can control is me. That's it. I am going to do the best I possibly can. And sometimes, look, man, it might be some shameless self-promotion, but I am going to be effective and efficient in the tasks I've been given. And I'm going to go bust my hump at it and be the best I possibly can be.
So you mentioned, we talked about social media. How has social media changed really the playing field as a coach? Do you have to worry about social media with your players? Do you find is it a distraction to them or?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you have to manage those things. Hey, don't say anything stupid on social media. Don't get involved with back and forth and all that stuff. And then you have these guys who do these, people say horrible things. People say horrible things about me on social media. My wife, it drives my wife nuts, and she doesn't understand how I have the thickest skin of any human on the planet. I'll be honest with you. I don't care what people think about me. I have plenty of friends. I'm married. I'm not trying to pick up any chicks. I don't care what people think about me. So people can say whatever the hell they want to say about me on social media. I can go climb in bed and go to sleep, and it doesn't bother me at all. Not everybody's like that.
Right.
Not everybody's like that. And so you hear the stuff with kids with people will say something about kids because they play. Because, if you do play, you're in the spotlight a little bit. And it does bother them. And what you try to teach them is that, look, man, you don't get any points for those things. Just play the game. Do the things you're supposed to do. And the best revenge is success and victory. And let's go win the game. And then they can't say anything about social media after that because they've lost. So I don't, I would say people tell me I'm Twitter famous because of my Twitter account. I have a lot of people who know me. I honestly, I run into a lot of people kind of all over the country when I go places who have followed me on Twitter a little bit. But it's kind of that's something I kind of just kid around with. But that's the only social media account that I have. It's mostly me to either say something about football or say some stupid things. But I try to discourage the kids to putting. I don't. Just a sounding board for me. As I just say things, and I'm not going to get dragged in the mud with people who come in there and be negative. Yeah, I just don't. That's whatever. I just move on because honestly, it doesn't affect me. It doesn't bother me. I'm going to go eat some dinner and move on in my life. It's harder when you're 15, 16 years old to do those things, and so it is an issue that you have to manage.
Yeah, social acceptance is always that's the thing at that age.
Well, that's the problem now with social media. Everyone instant gratification people want with the likes and the views. And
substance over style. Style over substance.
Yeah, I mean,
and that's where we are in our society. People would rather look good on social media than be a hidden success.
Right.
And I don't. That's very foreign. And it's probably just because of my age, kind of where I am in my life, and I'm a Gen Xer where we grew up freaking running the roads, and it's just different. We don't we have Gen Xers have very thin skin.
Yeah.
I mean thick skin. You can say we grew up in harsh like that, and in kids today it's harder when somebody says that to you in your circle group, because that circle of people who know you could be millions of people.
That's right.
Humiliate you and millions of people. So, I didn't grow up with that.
Yeah, I'm saying, Gen X, you ride your bike now, I've more road rash, and you have thick skin because, man, you got beat up.
Yeah, you sorted things out with your fists. I mean, that's really was, I tell people this. That was it. And some of my best friends in my life are guys that I have punched in the nose or punched me in the nose.
Yeah, that's the same thing.
It is.
I would we'd get into a fight at school or after school, and the next day we're like, "What's up, bud?"
That's it. And that is kind of and we've lost a little bit of that. And I'm not saying we should be letting kids fight.
No, yeah.
But the other side of that is that boys, especially, I think sometimes things get so bad because we don't let people deal with it. We don't, used to, the whole, bullying and all of that stuff. There was a time where you dealt with bullies, you just stood up for you. We taught people to stand up for yourself. Hey, look, you might get punched in the face. But generally, it was over with there. Now we go tell a teacher, go tell somebody, and it almost never ends. It makes it worse.
Yeah. Well, with social media now, it's like
it's
like, oh, so and so did this, so and so did that. And
I'm so glad we didn't grow up when we had all this stuff.
Yeah.
When I was an underclassman in the locker room, the juniors and seniors, half of them had criminal records already. But they would come down with the hand fighters, the tackling dummies, and attack us. But it wasn't bullying. It took me a while to figure this out, and I grow up. They're just seeing who's going to stand up for themselves.
That's it.
And by doing that, that means you're going to have their back on the football field.
Yeah.
They're just testing you. There's nothing mean about it.
You ever see the movie 300?
Yes.
When they send the kids out, and the guy kills the wolf, and you got to go out by yourself naked, and you got nothing but your spear, and you got to come back in 10 days or whatever it is. There are, again, it goes back to kind of what I was talking about. There are no trials anymore for young people. There are no trials where we force them into difficult situations. They go to high school, they go to middle school, high school, and everybody, it's just so hard, and then we get here, and then we've basically made it where in schools nowadays, used to be if you were suspended, you got zeros when you were suspended. You're an ISS, you got zeros.
Mm-hmm.
Well, nowadays you can't. Your behavior can't be tied to your academic performance, which is to tell anybody who's got a job that's the case. And so, but there's no trials that kids have to go through. There's no. I mean, we send people to college, and college is a joke now. I mean, it is literally just a joke. And don't get me wrong, people chase girls and drank beer in the 1990s. But the rigor of our society academically, because of the pressure of academic performance, it has gotten significantly less difficult. And we, like I deal with kids all the time, and I love them. They're very intelligent kids. They don't have the problem-solving skills kids 20, 25 years ago have, in the common sense. And I told you they were more worldly. They know more about other cultures and all that stuff. But the ability to sort things out, we're doing a poor job of teaching that from a societal standpoint.
I 100% agree. There was a sermon that I listened to a long time ago. Young men do not have a rite of passage anymore.
Yep.
There's no more of this. You've accomplished this feat. You're no longer a boy. You're a man.
Yep.
We don't have that anymore for these young kids, which is too bad. And to piggyback on that, I agree that critical thinking, my common sense stuff has kind of got out.
Yeah.
There was a time when we sit in the classroom and the teacher would ask a question, 30 other kids. I had to figure it out. I didn't have anyone holding my hand and kind of helped me with it.
Yeah.
You had to figure it out.
And there were ramifications if you didn't. It's so much harder. It's more difficult. People ask me what we should do to fix public education or make it improve it, or make it easier to fail kids. Put the impetus back on parents. Because right now, everything is on the teacher. You haven't called, well, did you call them? Well, you know what? My parents knew I was in school. They knew I was in school. They knew we got report cards every 4.5 weeks. They followed up. Nowadays, you can check grades online and do this. And it's not just a Glynn County thing. It is everywhere. It's everywhere. That you've got to, did you call the teacher? We can't give them an F if you didn't call them. Yeah. Why? I mean, it's the parent's job. It should be the parent's job to do these things. So I think we put too much on the teacher in terms of that. But, it just comes back to, the idea of academic rigor. We're teaching more stuff. I think we're probably, if the idea of, we used to teach things with the depth of a lake, and now we're teaching things that the depth of education is ankle deep now.
Yeah.
And I remember it because I'm old enough to remember it, what it was like 29 years ago, 30 years ago. And part of that is, I think, because of like all of those classes were hard as hell. And the dumb kids just had to keep up.
Yep.
And so if you were a C student, you were over here with this guy who was going to go to Harvard, you had to bust your hump in there because that was the way the world worked.
Exactly. Talk about parents and coaching. And I've done a little bit of coaching, not at your level, but there's always that parent factor when it comes to coaching. How involved are some of your players' parents?
I think it's different. A lot of parents sit in the 10 best players to play. There's some of that. But I think as a whole, parents are struggling just as much as everybody else with kind of dealing with kids. Nobody gives you a book on how to train your kids. You see people who are good parents and get it. Most of the people who are really good parents are the kids or the parents who, again, hold their kids accountable, discipline their kids. You hear horror stories about parents, and I've had parents that, they're going to get me fired and all of those things. You have those guys. I tell parents, I'll meet with any parent anytime. A lot of coaches have a closed door policy. The parent is the kid's advocate. And anytime they want to talk about their kid, come on. They want to talk playing time, I'll talk playing time. If I'm invested in the kid, I shouldn't be afraid to talk with the parent about what their kid's doing well. And sometimes a lot of coaches don't believe that you should listen. They have this idea that you shouldn't listen to parents. Well, that's not necessarily true because you have a certain perspective on your football program. And when you listen to people who have a different perspective, sometimes you can learn stuff. I've learned stuff from parents. But I don't know if parents have gotten any better or any worse. I just think they have more access with emails. Anybody get your cell phone, so they text you in the middle of the night. I will tell people when they call me about something on a Tuesday night at 8:30 at night. If it's not an emergency, hey, man, shoot me an email, and we'll set up a time to meet about it. I'm at home. When I go all live with my family, okay? So if somebody calls me and say, I have an emergency with my son, I'll pick the phone up and talk with them about that. But if they want to know why he's not playing, he's not the starting guard, I'm not talking to him at 8:30 at night. That's the time I'm spending with my wife and my kid. And most people are very respectful of that. They'll just shoot an email. Ask them to shoot an email instead of meeting up and sit down. Most people are, they just want to be heard and they want you to listen to them, and they want some understanding.
Okay, so we're getting close to the end here, and I want to thank you for your time because we've really been going on for a while. I lost track of time, but you're just at the start of your season. You got how many more games left do you have?
We have 7 games left. Yeah,
so 7 more games left. I wish you the best of luck. Hope you win all 7 of them.
Me too.
We can't wait to get out there. We do love coming here and watching some of your games during the season.
Awesome.
They're great games to watch. I'm a huge football fan, so high school, college, pros. I can't support my Patriots right now. So, but thank you again for your time here. We really appreciate it, and good luck for the rest of the season.
Awesome. Thank you, man. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Go Terrors.
Go Terrors.
Keep right.